I am Riccardo Patrese. You are listening Beyond the Grid.
Hi everyone, and welcome once again to Beyond the Grid with me, Tom Clarkson. As ever, it's great to have you with us for what is a really exciting show this week, because my guest is none other than Riccardo Patrese, a driver who will be very familiar to all of you who watched Formula One in the 80s and 90s. Riccardo is one of the most charming and entertaining people I've met in racing, which is always a good start when you're recording a podcast. And he was no slouch behind the wheel either. 6 Grand Prix wins and 3 top 3 placings in the World Championship make him Italy's most successful driver since Alberto Ascari, who was killed back in 1955. What a crazy thought. But as well as success and speed, Riccardo also had incredible tenacity. His Formula One career spanned 256 starts across 17 seasons, which is a hugely impressive tally in any era, but particularly back in the 70s, 80s and early 90s, when the sport was still so dangerous. He also showed great mental resilience because he ruffled a few feathers early in his career and was ostracised by the establishment, the senior drivers led by James Hunt. Then there were the lean middle years between 1983 and 89, when he took only 3 podiums in 5 years. But it all came good later on while at Williams, and particularly when he was teammate to Nigel Mansell in 1991 and 92, the glory days indeed. So sit back and enjoy hearing from a living legend, a man who had 4 world champion teammates, Alan Jones, Nelson Piquet, Nigel Mansell and Michael Schumacher, and great friendships with people like Bernie Ecclestone and Frank Williams. There are some cracking anecdotes, including memories of that famous Monaco win in 1982, the race that nobody wanted to win. He talks about a prank played on him by Nelson Piquet. There's the inside story on that falling out with James Hunt, and much, much more. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Riccardo, welcome to Beyond the Grid. It's lovely to have you on the show. We're having to do this remotely through the internet. I'm seeing you though, and it looks absolutely beautiful at the moment down in Padua in northern Italy.
Yes, the weather is very good. Unfortunately, we have this strange period that is going on that keep all of us at home. But fortunately, we have a nice place to stay. We can have open air, and we have also some horses with a stable behind the house, so we can ride. And so at the end, it looks like that we are out of the world, because actually the period is very bad. We know that there are people that they are not very good, and also the fact that you have to stay home. If you have the space is okay. If you don't have, I think it's going to be very hard. So I have a privilege to be in a place like this, definitely.
How many horses have you got?
We have about 10 horses because my son, before to do karting, he was riding full time, and he was a component of the national Italian team for show jumping in the children category. We went to do an European Championship in Fontainebleau in France with him. So we have quite good horses to jump, and we keep them in a good form because you have to move every day because they need to be like an athlete trained. So anyway, it's an interesting job also that.
It's an amazing thing, you Patreses, because before you became a racing driver, you were a brilliant swimmer, you were a brilliant skier. I think, am I right to say you were in the Italian national ski team?
Not really in the regional ski team group. Yes, trying to be then in the national team. Then I changed my aim, and I started to do karting, and then of course I became a racing driver. And yes, let's say that my life has always been full of sports. And my family too, my children, all of them, they were always taught to be sportive nature.
Well, look, let's talk Formula One. And I'd like to start, actually, Riccardo, if I can, by asking you about that start record, that 256 starts that you made. And you had the record for 19 years. What did that record mean to you?
Well, I always thought that was not a great record, but at the end of my career, I thought that if I could survive in Formula One for so many Grand Prix and so many years, it meant that the quality of the job I did was not so bad. Because as you know, if you are good in Formula One, you can resist. If you are not, you are off. So being in Formula One for 17 seasons, I think it was proud for me.
How did your passion for Formula One change during those 17 seasons?
No, well, I think at the end, the passion was always there. Of course, I didn't have always a good periods. So I had to go through low and up because I started my career that it seemed very easy and quick that I could be a winner because South Africa 78, it was my, I think, 7th Grand Prix. And I could win that Grand Prix if the engine didn't let me down. And then after that, I had to wait many Grand Prix before to have my first win. Then, okay, with Brabham, I went on the top. Then when I went to Alfa Romeo, I went down. And then, fortunately, to Mr. Ecclestone that got me back to Brabham team, I could restart to go up because I did 2 seasons with Brabham again, 86, 87. And then finally I got the opportunity to go to Williams. And then I think it was my best part of the career, being with Williams.
What, because you had that combination of experience and speed when you were at Williams?
Well, of course, I was a mature driver and I had still the will to be aggressive because I didn't. Okay, I had a lot of good results, but not really a top driver yet. And in that case, I saw that I could have the opportunity to go for the championship because we were fighting for the championship with the Williams Renault team in those years. So, of course, the motivation was very high.
Actually, now, and of course, Mansell got to that championship in 92, didn't he? Because there's so much to ask you, can I just start by asking about some of your sort of the toughest teammates you came up against? You know, there were, 4 world champion teammates. You really put yourself through it, didn't you, with them? But Alan Jones, you were teammates with him at Shadow in 77. He went on to win the title, of course, in 1980. How tough was Alan? How fast was he?
Well, I mean, you're talking about 4 world champions. So they were all fast and with different characteristics, but they were all tough. Alan, of course, he was not yet a world champion when he was my teammate. And because of that, we were very equal. No? We were trying with the same opportunities to raise our game. And we were very friendly. We went very well together in the year that we were at Shadow in 77. I think that he proved that he could be very, very strong driver. And, talking also with Patrick Head about him, he described him as a very, very tough person, always committed and with not much talking. He was always straight to what he had to do. So that was Alan Jones, and we kept always a very good friendship till he left Formula One, and still now.
Was he Mansell-esque in the way that he drove a car, in that he was a sort of strong, he had that upper body strength, didn't he? And that sort of unforgiving nature, maybe?
Well, they were both very strong physically, and of course they were using this strength in their body to have the control of the car. Because we have to remember, in those days we didn't have any power steering or any power brake. So the car was very heavy to drive. So the fact that they were stronger men, I think it helped them, and they used this force.
And how tough was it for you in 77? Because you were combining your Formula 2 season with Formula 1. You did, 7 races for Shadow? And maybe 9 races, I can't remember. But you were sort of toing and froing all across the world, really, weren't you?
Yeah, it was not tough. The enthusiasm was very high. I was very happy to be a racing driver. Started with the idea to be a Formula 2 driver, and after the pole position I did at Nürburgring with 3 seconds in front of Jochen Master, that was coming from Formula 1, that he was an official McLaren driver. I got this proposal from Shadow to debut in Monte Carlo. So the fact that everything was blowing on my side, even if I had to race every weekend, it was not very hard. Actually, at the end of the year, just to have some more races, I went also to Macau and Formula 2 Japanese Grand Prix. And I liked it very much. It was a period that I was completely free and young, so the tiredness never came.
How tough was it to make your debut at Monaco?
Well, it was very tough because Monaco is Monaco. I had only, I think, 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers at the Paul Ricard on Monday with the car, so not much experience about Formula 1 for sure. And also about the circuit, I just drove the year before with Formula 3, but I couldn't make the final because I had a crash in the heat, so not many laps done. And when I went on Thursday for the first laps in the circuit, and I had to discover the circuit, discover the car, really not looking in the mirrors because I was very concentrated to look at the road and to not to make accident. Of course, not being very fast. I remember all the seniors that they were, upset. Make the finger not in a very nice way because I was on the way. So it was very tough because of my possibility to adapt to the situation, and also mentally because I felt a little bit of opposition from the drivers that they were there. This on Thursday. Then everything came a little bit better on Saturday because at the end, in those days, only 18 cars, they could start the Grand Prix. And I think we were 24 or 26. So some of us, they had to be not qualified. But I managed to be on the grid on 17th position. And that was a great result because with no experience. And, in a difficult circuit as Monaco, it was a fantastic result. I think it was even better the day after because I finished 9th at my first Grand Prix. And that was with Jackie Hicks with the ensign behind me. That was a great driver.
Indeed, he was. Was Jones helpful to you prior to that first race?
No, I don't think he was helpful. He was just doing his job and I was doing my job. I remember that, I was... my English is still a very Italian English, not super good English. But in those days, it was even worse that I had only the notions that the school gave to me, but not too much talking. So I was asking to the engineers something that probably was not really what I wanted, because when I checked the car in the Parc Fermé and I saw that the car was regulated in a way, and the car was completely opposite. So probably I wanted something, but they understood something completely different. And at the end, I drove a car that for me was not known, and that was very funny. But of course, then being with English team for 90% of my career, I could manage to improve that problem.
Is it true that both you and Alan had an offer to go to Williams in 78?
Yes, it was true, this story, because Eros started in '78 as well, and only me or Alan could be the driver for Eros for '78 because the second driver was Gunnar Nilsson, that was coming from Lotus. We didn't have an answer for a while, and in the same moment, Frank was building this new team with Saudia as a sponsor, and asked me or Alan, because he was doing only one car team for '78. He said, who between you and Alan give me a positive answer for next year is going to be my driver. But me and Alan, both of us, we were a little bit not sure about, because the team was new. Frank had always before problem economically. So both of us, we wanted to stay with Eros for '78 if we could. So the answer didn't come from Eros till Macau, after the Macau Grand Prix in the middle of November. And the answer was that they wanted for me to stay with the team, with Eros. So at the end, I decided to stay with Eros, and Alan, because he didn't have a chance to stay there, said yes to Frank, and he did the right choice, because at the end, the team really started fantastic, and in 1980 he could win the World Championship.
Okay, well, look, that's Alan Jones. What about Nelson Piquet then? How do you reflect on him? And did you enjoy your time as a teammate with him?
Yeah, well, first of all, I always enjoyed my 17 years of Formula One, even the low times. Now, I still have a very good relationship with all the teammates I had. And of course, also with Nelson, I still have a very good friendship. And it was when I came to Brabham, he was already world champion, because he won in 1981. But the atmosphere was very good. It was very familiar, the team, and his attitude was always very, a good time all the time, always jokes. And so at the end, they were 2 years really very good with Nelson. The team, it was like a family team. Gordon, Charlie Whiting was the chief mechanic, Harry Blash, and of course Bernie. We were always together, and of course also very competitive, because in 1983 we won the championship. The car was very, very, very good, as the 82 car, the Aspirator, that I won my first Grand Prix in Monaco. But I can just say one thing. The first day of testing, I went to Paul Ricard, because in winter time we were testing a lot in Paul Ricard. And and I met all the team, and Nelson was there. We changed in the motorhome together, me and Nelson talking, and then we went for the day of testing. At the end of the day, it was already dark, because winter time, 5 o'clock, was dark. I went back to change, and suddenly I couldn't find my trousers. I said, okay, and now what I do? Because, I can go to the hotel with the over, but I would like to find my trousers. So I went around, and nobody knew about the trousers, where they were. And I said, I left here in the motorhome. They must be somewhere. After half an hour that I was going around to look for the trouser, my mechanic came and said, come. Out of the garages, there were very high poles where the flags they were standing usually. And in one of these poles, about 20 meters high, there were my trousers, like a flag that they were on the top of the pole at 20 meters high. And I said, who did this? Who did that? Of course, Nelson. It was my first day with the team, and immediately a joke. just to start. And he went on like that for 2 years.
Welcome to the team, Riccardo. Welcome to the team.
Exactly. Welcome to the team.
How quick was he? Was he your quickest teammate?
No, the quickest teammate I had, I think it was Michael
Schumacher at Benetton in 93.
Yeah, I think that, Alan Johnson was a world champion. Fantastic. Nelson was a world champion. Fantastic. Nigel as well. But who was outstanding about speed and think that he could do into the car, it was Michael, because he's the only driver that I reckon together with Senna, even with an inferior car, they could win races and try to aim to win a championship. So they could make that big, small step ahead, even with a car that was not a winning car, that they could win races. I mean, Alan Johnson, when he won the championship, he had the best car of that championship. He was stronger. The same for Nelson. Even if, he had to fight a lot, but especially in 1981, I think he had the very best car. In 83, the fight was very strong with Renault. And when Nigel won in 1992, we had a so superior car that he had to fight only against me. But Michael Schumacher, the speed that he could produce into the car, and the thing that I saw that he could do, it was for me different from all the others that I could see.
But was it a fair fight between you and Michael? He was in his second full season of Formula One. You were in your 17th season of Formula One. I mean, the car wasn't the best car on the grid, as you say, in 93. That was the Williams. And therefore, do you think his appetite was somehow stronger than yours?
Well, I think that, as you said, it was my 17th season, and for him only the second one. The car, I went to Benetton because they wanted me to improve the quality of the car, because I had the experience of Williams. We had the active, we had the automatic gearbox, so my experience could help to make the program improvements quicker. But my enthusiasm after some races was not very good, because Briatore started to complain about my performance, and he said that I had to go to pension. And, and at the end of the day, I think that definitely Michael was quicker than I was. But maybe I was tired. If I had the same enthusiasm of the beginning, in that moment, maybe I could match better Michael. But, when you are young, and I think he was also very talented, because in that moment, Mr. Briatore said, Riccardo is not able to match the performance of a young boy, and, he's a vice world champion. If I put another driver instead of him, for sure it's going to be as quick of Michael, because Michael was not a Schumacher that now everybody knows. He was just a young guy. He didn't have the success that then he had with 7 championships and all this story. So because of that, he was giving hard time, because from his point of view, everybody could be as quick of Michael Schumacher, but I couldn't. At the end of the day, that championship, for sure, Michael was quicker than I was, but he finished 4th in the championship and I finished 5th, not very much far from him, just one position. But as you said, he was the second season, I was the 17th season, and for sure, also with atmosphere that didn't help me to have the moral up. I think not only... Probably was not my best speed I could produce. For sure, in other years, I could go much quicker than the speed I had in 93.
Did Nelson give you any advice before going to Benetton? Because you replaced him
Well, he said to me, be careful with Briatore. He said, I think he had problems with Briatore as well.
He did say that, did he?
Yeah, he said, but from that point of view, I have to say that, yes, he was correct, because at the end, I went to Benetton in 93 because Alain Prost had to come to Williams because of Renault, and Nigel was world champion, and I couldn't think that he had to go. At the end, Nigel got some problem with Frank, and he left the team and he went to America. But 1 week before, I signed the contract for Benetton. And of course, when I knew that there was a place free, and also Frank had called me and he said, are you free? Now you can sign for us for 1994. I said, no, fortunately, I signed for Benetton. He said, but can you go and ask maybe if they let you free, you can come stay with us. Of course, I went to the management of the team, the president, because the management was Briatore. The president was Alessandro Benetton in Treviso, and I asked if I could go back to Williams and not stay with them, because of course it was my team last 5 years. It was a winning team and I could have the chance to win the championship and so on and so on. But he told me, no, you are too important to us because of the program we have, so please stay with us. He said in a very polite way, and in a way I signed the contract. So I said, okay, I put my sign on, so I stay with you. And I said, sorry, Frank, but I have to stay with Benetton. But I was happy to be with Benetton because with Briatore, that he was very good friend of Alessandro Nannini, that he was a very good friend of mine too. We had a very good atmosphere. No? So at the end, for me, it was difficult to think that maybe Briatore could be, not positive to me. But at the end, after 5 Grand Prix, I started, as I said, to have a bad atmosphere with myself. And at the end, I was really counting the number of Grand Prix to finish the season because I was a little bit frustrated with him.
There are a lot of drivers, I think, who struggled with Briatore, but also struggled alongside Michael. Did you feel that it was a one-car team at Benetton at the time? Do you feel that you got the same treatment from the team?
No, the difference was that, I was putting a lot of attention to improve the car, because I came from a perfect car, as it was the 92 car, and I came to a car that had a lot of troubles with all this electronic. So more than be concentrated to be super fast, that instead Michael was super concentrated, first of all, to be super fast, and he didn't care much if the car was behaving not good. I was trying, to put everything in the right way, because I knew what he had to be a supercar, because I had the year before. The car never came to this point till, let's say, end of August, beginning of September. And in effect, when the work that I think, because I was complaining, the car was not correct here, the car is not correct there, we have to improve this way. All the team, they thought that I was finding excuses because maybe Michael was quicker, but I was trying to improve the program because I knew that the car could be better. And at the end, pushing hard in all the weak points we had, I think the car at the end came good. And at the end, in Estoril, I think the car started to be very good, and Michael could win also the Grand Prix there. So at the end, I think that because of that, I felt this not attention from the team. No attention, that the team didn't care much about my performance, but they were very much concentrated about the performance of Michael, because it was quicker than I was. And for me, this kind of attitude I never had in the teams before, because when I was in the team always thought that I was putting 101% of my effort, my concentration, to help the team and to be the quickest I could. So it was a surprise for me to be in a team where I was in an angle, not considering me much. And that as this is because I was counting the Grand Prix to finish the season. But from this point of view, let's say that I didn't like it for sure, and probably also influenced my performance. But I don't know if there was a different material. The material, I think, the teams, because of the World Constructor Championship is the most important thing. I think always they put the best car for their drivers on the road, because they wanted to have the best performance from both of the drivers. So from that point of view, I never thought that there was a better car than the other car in the teams. You understand? If you talk about you had the better material or you had the worst material, I don't trust this, because the teams usually they put the best they can to have the two best cars on the grid.
Let's talk about Williams and Mansell now. You've said already that that was the best Patrese that we saw when you were at Williams and you were enjoying all of that success. I've got a question for you, Riccardo. The first half of 1991, you were brilliantly fast. Mansell, you outqualified Mansell in the first half of the season. What happened mid-season? That's what I want to know. Because he suddenly got closer to you again. And what are your memories of that 91 season?
Well, yes, the first part of the season I was better than Nigel. And then Nigel came to the speed that he had to be. Let's say that then we start to be more equal in performances. The fact was that in 91, because of course we have to compare 91 with 92, the characteristic of the car they suited better my driving style, because we didn't have traction control. Because of that, coming out of slow corner, I could use the traction due to my right foot better than Nigel, and so I could come out from a slow corner a little bit faster than him. And in quick corners, we were, let's say, doing the same speed. So I had a disadvantage out of slow corners against him. And in the 92 car that had much more downforce had the traction control. So the advantage I had out of slow corner was completely gone, because the traction control electronically control this matter. And in the high-speed corner, because the car was producing a massive downforce, the steering wheel was very, very, very heavy. And because of that, and we were talking about the strength of the driver before, Nigel was stronger than I was. He could, handle the steering wheel a little bit more agile. He had more confidence in high-speed corner because he had more strength, and he could steer with less effort that I did. So what happened? If the advantage that I had in 91 was gone, slow corner, and in high-speed corner was the same in 91. In this case, in 92, no advantage out of slow corner and a little bit of disadvantage in high-speed corner, and Nigel was a little bit more efficient than I was in the car.
Fascinating. Really fascinating, that insight. Was the FW14B, that 92 car, was that the best car you ever drove?
It was the most effective car against the opposition that I drove, because we had a car that was one or 2 seconds quicker than anybody else. In effect, we won the World Championship with 1 and 2 in the classification. My favorite car was the 91 car, the 14.
How good was the FW11 from 1987, because you were actually racing for Brabham that year, and then Bernie released you to replace Mansell after Mansell had damaged his back in Japan. How good was that car with the turbo Honda engine? An absolute beast, right?
Okay, because we are doing this interview, I have to say that also how we came to the fact that I was a 1988 Williams driver. Bernie, when I came to Formula One, he liked me immediately. And he always gave me advices at the beginning. He wanted to have me before Nelson in Brabham, already in maybe 78, 79, I think. But I had a letter signed with Mr. Ferrari that I probably could be a Ferrari driver if Villeneuve had to go. Then he didn't go, but there was a moment that Gilles was not favorable to stay in Ferrari for the following season. So I had this letter, so I had to say to Benny, no, I cannot come because I didn't say that I had this letter, but I found an excuse not to, that I couldn't go to his team. Then, okay, the thing with Ferrari didn't go on, especially finished completely at the end, in the middle of 1981. So I said to Benny, do you still want me in the team? In effect, he took me for 1982. Benny has been a friend of mine always. And in 1987, he already knew that he was going to sell the team, that he didn't want to have any more Brabham for the following years. So it's very strange that, a team owner or a team give a driver to another team. But because he knew this, and there was a test in Imola beginning of September where Nigel again was not available, he called Frank and he said, you need a driver for the test because Nigel is not coming. Why you don't test Riccardo? Because I think he's a good driver. Anyway, I can give you Riccardo. Don't worry, for me it's not a problem. So he called Frank to propose me for the test in Imola. I was surprised, but I was happy.
Was Bernie your manager?
No, he was not my manager. He was just my friend, and he's still a very good friend of mine. And he was a friend of mine. He liked me. Bernie is a person that when he likes a person, he's always on his side. If he doesn't like the person, then you can have a problem with him. But I was lucky that I was in the side that he liked me. So at the end, I did this test in Imola, and I was very quick because I matched the time of the pole that I think or Piquet or Mansell did for the Grand Prix. And because of that, Frank, when then Nelson decided to go, gave me the chance to sign the contract. So if Bernie didn't have this idea to send me to that test, maybe I couldn't have the driver for the following year with Williams. And also because Nigel couldn't make the last race in Adelaide, he said, okay, don't worry, I find another driver. Go and drive the Williams because he knew that the following year I was a Williams driver. He said, so you start early your adventure with Williams. And if you remember, for that race, I was wearing the Brabham overall, maybe with some patch of some sponsor of Williams, but my Brabham overall, but I drove for Williams. The car was fantastic. I remember that the Honda engine with the BMW, we were using around 11,500 revs, something like that. It was enough to make an over-revving of 100 revs, and the engine had to go down because maybe the following lap the engine could explode, and they were really very, very careful about over-revving. The Honda engine, especially for the test, coming out of the chicane in front of the pits, instead to go to third to fourth, I did a mistake. I went third to second. And the engine screamed in a way really very bad. And I said, oh. And that was not a very good start because it was the first day of the 2 days testing. I said, maybe it was the fifth lap I said, oh my God, I'm here. I have a chance to prove that I am in the quickest car of the year and to go quick. And I do a mistake. And now for sure I'm going to have a bollocking and so on. I went down and said, look, I did a mistake. I did, instead of the third fourth, I did the third second. Probably there is a big over-revving. Okay, there were all the Japanese engineers. They checked and they said, no problem, you can go. And the engine stayed on for the next 2 following days. So the engine was really very, very strong engine. And of course, the car was the best car of the year.
That's a great story, isn't it? That's a great story. Now, tell me a little bit more about Bernie. Did you feel at that second stint with the team in 86 and 87 that Bernie was starting to take his focus off the team and he was focusing more on running the sport? Did you get that sense from him that it was no longer his priority?
Well, I didn't have this feeling, but the fact was that at the end he sold the team, and selling the team, he gave me the opportunity to catch the train of Williams. Let's say again, I had 84 and 85 with Alfa Romeo, and 85 was the lowest point of my career because I didn't get a point in the championship. The car was very unreliable, and really it could be a big trouble to find another opportunity in Formula One. And Bernie got me back into the team in 86, always to help me because he trusts me, he trusts my ability. He always thought that I could be a very good driver. And, that is also a thing that I have to thank him, because if he didn't give me the chance to go back to Brabham, maybe 85 was my last year in Formula One.
Good old Bernie, really. Now, you mentioned Ferrari a minute ago. For that 79 season, you signed that option in case Villeneuve went somewhere else. Did you ever meet the old man, Enzo?
Oh, yes. Yes, I did everything with it.
Can you just describe that meeting?
Well, I was very, very young, and when I went into his office in Modena, not in Fiorano, it was in the old factory of Ferrari in Modena. I was with him alone, but he was really very, paternalist. He was like a father that he was talking with his son, and at the end, I found very comfortable with him. Even if I could breathe the atmosphere of a very, very charismatic person. And even when at the end this letter didn't go on because he decided to keep Villeneuve because he was doing disasters. But the last Grand Prix that was in Canada, he won the Grand Prix. So at the end, because he liked very, very much Villeneuve, Gilles. But all the media said that it was not good, so on and so. The media was against Villeneuve because he was doing crashes and crazy things. So at the end, he was prepared to replace him. But the last Grand Prix he won in Canada, so he had the strength to say, look, I chose Villeneuve, and Villeneuve won the last Grand Prix, so I keep Villeneuve. And this is because this letter didn't go on. The fact was that he wanted me, and because he couldn't make the letter go on, he called me and he said, "Look, Patrese, the first time I get a change in the team, I want you to be." And he was, and they say, "If you want any advice, call me, consider me like a father." So we went, and this is because also, that this letter and this, talking with Ferrari, I had to say to Bernie, "No, please, I don't want." I said, I remember, if I well remember, I said to Bernie when he asked me if I wanted to have, because before the 3-year contracts that Nelson had, Bernie offered to me this 3-year contract, and I said, "Look, Bernie, I am only 2 years in Formula One. I have not much experience, so I'm not." Ready to come to a so big team as yours. So I had to find this excuse, but because I hoped that one day in the next period I could have a chance to go to Ferrari. But this thing completely went off in 1981, because there was a moment that it looked like for 1982 I could go to Ferrari. And because Della Casa called me and he said, maybe the time is good now that for next year. So I hoped that for 1982 I could go to Ferrari, but because of Piccinini that had, let's say, more, he liked more Pironi. They took Pironi at the end, and they told me that if I wanted to be free morally, I could go where I wanted. Then I said, okay, Ferrari. Okay, I waited too much. I called Bernie and I went to Brabham. So you understand? I don't know if I explained very well.
Do you think you would have been ready for Ferrari in 79? An Italian driver at Ferrari. You were still so young. Do you think actually it was a good thing that it never happened?
No, I think that if it could happen, it was a good thing, because it was a dream. I was young, I was Italian. Ferrari, Ferrari was the best thing for an Italian driver. It was a dream that it could come true. So at the end, if I had the possibility, I don't know if I was ready or not, but let's say that with the enthusiasm I had, and in any way, the thing I did in those days, that they were not so bad, I think I could manage to be a Ferrari driver. Ferrari was like a dream. For a young Italian driver to be a Ferrari driver, it was a dream. After 81, Ferrari was like a completely another team. In effect, around the 90s, I had some other contacts with Ferrari team, but because I had the option to stay with Williams, that was a winning team, I said, thank you very much. I stay with Williams. The difference was that the beginning was a dream, and then if I was convenient to go to Ferrari, I could go to Ferrari. Otherwise, I stayed with another team. I wanted to be in the best team I could have.
Which year in the 90s are you talking about? When was that contact?
It was first when Ferrari had Mr. Fiorio as a team manager. That Mr. Fiorio, I knew him very well because of the Lancia endurance program that we did together. And at the end of 1991, there was another engineer that I knew from Lancia, that I think was Mr. Colombo, that was the manager. It was deciding things in Ferrari in those days, that asked me if I wanted to go to Ferrari for 1992. I said, look, I'm in Williams. Next year, I knew that the active was coming. I have the best car. Thank you very much. But I stay with Williams.
Definitely the right decision.
yeah, exactly. Because, after it was still, the Ferrari was in a very bad period. 79 was the last moment that they won the championship, and they had some good results with Michele Alboreto, but Arnoux, but the team was not on the top in those days for sure.
It's funny, Riccardo, we're speaking today. It's the 19th anniversary of Michele's death today.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. We were very good friends and very good driver, very, very, very good driver. I think that if he had the right chance, he could be a world champion for sure. And when I stopped racing, I was always with him in Monte Carlo, and he said to me, you have to come back and do something, making some racing, something. And I say, but why you don't stay at home and you relax a little bit? He was like the kind of person, the kind of driver that he liked to be in the car all the time. And unfortunately, in that test, he had this sad moment. Unfortunately, I was giving him the advice to stop, and he was giving me the advice to start again. Maybe I was more right than him.
Riccardo, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, just talking about Italian drivers, it was a very rich period for Italian drivers when you were in Formula One. There was yourself, there was Michele, there was De Angelis, De Cesare. I mean, there was a real Italian contingent.
Yeah, we were a good team of drivers. There was one season we were 13 Italian drivers in Formula One.
That's mad.
We had for sure the help of the sponsors, many Italian sponsors that they were in Formula One, and also the quality. Let's say that myself, Michele, De Angelis, Andrea, and some others behind us, we were good. I think at the moment we don't have Italian drivers, not because they are not good, because there is not an economic support for them that they can go to Formula One. Because in these days is even more important to have somebody behind that help you to race. In those days, team managers, they were coming and trying to find talented drivers because they knew that a young driver had to be like an investment. At the beginning, for sure, the driver had to make mistakes, damages, but after when he started to be more mature, he can, all the money that maybe they lost with broken cars or broken engines, they could come back because, now to be like Hamilton or Vettel, a world champion, you must be as the old world champions, because at the top, I think an Hamilton, if you put an Hamilton in a 1983 turbo car, no problem for him. But what happened behind, let's say, the maximum level of driver, now the cars, they are in a way more simple to drive because of all the electronics, because of all the helps that the driver they can have, and because of that, and also the track are safer, so you cannot crash very often the car, and you cannot break mechanically the car. So at the end, you put a young driver, even a 17-old driver, and that he cannot make many mistakes and he cannot make many damages. So at the end, you can try a lot of drivers because that in a way nothing dramatic can happen. In the days I started, it was very, very easy to go off the track, and also from the health point of view, the cars, they were very dangerous. Now the cars, they are much more safe, and everything, is helping to have a safer situation, technically and also from the accident point of view. So because of that, in those days, they were looking very carefully who could go in a Formula One car.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, I understand. What about Elio de Angelis? Well, we're talking about the dangers of the sport. You know, you were his teammate at Brabham in '86. He was killed while testing at Paul Ricard. Were you at that test?
Okay, with Elio in 1986, we became a teammate, and it was a situation between myself and him, not a very friendly situation. We had a lot of rivalry during our careers, so we were teammates, but not really, let's say, happy to stay together in the team. Anyway, we were looking each other with not much confidence. During the first days of our relationship, immediately things went better. And at the end, before the start of the season, we were friends and we worked very well together. It was a surprise between us because, we never had so special feelings. So we started the season and we were good in a good mood, a good atmosphere. The car was this car, the 55, that was a completely new concept that Gordon, that always had the genius idea, came on. The car was very flat, and let's say, if you look, we were sitting down with our shoulders completely out of the car. You can understand it. In those days, the cars, they were not on the top for safety. If I look now, a car that I drove in those days, I said, okay, I had a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of passion, but I can see now that the car has really some problem for safety. Okay, in first Grand Prix, I was more efficient than Elio. Elio struggled a little bit with the car, and after the Monaco Grand Prix, I had to go to Paul Ricard. I don't know if it was Tuesday or Wednesday. Anyway, Tuesday probably, to make the test. And Elio, at the end of the Grand Prix, came to me and he said, "Riccardo, look, I know that you are going to have this test. What do you think if I do the test instead of you? Because I need more time to adjust myself with the car. I need to learn better the car. I don't feel comfortable. So if you let me to do the test, I gain sometimes." So I said, "Look, Elio, for me, it's not a problem. Let's ask the team. If the team is happy, you can do the test. No problem." So we did this, and the team said, "Okay, Elio can come and do the test." So it depends that at the end, the test was for me, and probably if there was not this request from him, I was in the car when the accident happened. And that was one thing that I cannot forget still now. No, as things they can go in one way or in another because maybe God decide what had to go on.
Can you remember when you heard about the accident? Where were you? What were you doing?
I was in Padua playing tennis with my friends, and somebody came to me and he said, "Look, Elio had an accident. They don't know yet how is his condition." So I immediately called and they told me that it was critical, and unfortunately, he died after. I think he died immediately because of all the hot gas he had in his lungs.
How did that affect you? Did it affect your desire to get back in the car at all?
No, I was not happy at all to go back to the car. We were in Spa, I remember, only one car because Bernie decided to go there with only one car. At the first section, I went out, but I didn't have any desire to drive, and I was very sad, very, very down. And I remember that Bernie came to me and he talked to me for a while. And he said to me that he understood my moment. He had this moment with other drivers of his team or other friends of him that they died in racing. But he said that because I chose to be a racing driver, I had to accept this thing that it could happen. That for sure, Elio, he died, but he liked what he did, and because of that, I have not to be sad, and to respect his memory, I had to try to overtake the problem, go in the car and do the best I could to respect his memory. And because of these words that he told me, he gave me the strength to go back to the car and to overtake the problem, and I went on.
I mean, it wasn't your first brush with death because it happened all too frequently back then, didn't it? With Villeneuve and then actually Riccardo, of course, Peterson at Monza in 78. That must have been a very tough moment for you because you were being accused by people of causing the accident with Ronnie. How do you reflect on Monza 78 now?
Well, I reflect that what was done from my colleagues was completely wrong. I think all the world has this opinion now that the fact that I couldn't race in Watkins Glen, let's say that it was a very hard moment for me because I was only 24. I knew because I was in front of the accident. I didn't make any influence to the accident. It was not my fault. I had a big problem with the Italian justice for 3 years before they said that I was innocent. So a lot of pressure that because of my character, that is a strong character, I could overtake. I think I showed that I didn't race in Watkins Glen, and the following race 1 week after in Montreal, I finished fourth, so it was a good result.
Why were you singled out? I mean, it's a long time ago now, I understand that. But when you think back, why, you talk about not being allowed to race at Watkins Glen because 5 of the senior drivers said they would withdraw from the race if you were allowed to start. What was their issue?
The issue was that they wanted to give me a lesson because from their point of view, during the season, I drove in a too wild mood. And because of that, they wanted to give me a lesson, not because of the Monza accident, but because of my behavior during the season. But the fact was that all the world got this exclusion because of the Monza accident. Anyway, it was not correct that the 5 my colleagues, they could decide because the federation didn't say anything about, and the federation didn't get any. They said that I was completely okay. There was not any blame on me because of the Monza accident, but they decided. Because I was a fighter, when they wanted to have this, not for me racing, I went to a civil judge in a court in America with a friend, with a journalist friend of mine. We went, we asked if that was correct, and the judge said, but there is a penalty from your federation. No, there is not a penalty. So he said they cannot stop you working because you race in Watkins Glen, and that is like a work. Nobody from a federation said that you cannot do, so they are workers as you, they cannot decide. So I went back to the circuit with this piece of paper that said that I had to race. Because, the problem was Bernie that always trying to find the right compromise. I said, look, Riccardo, there's 5 world champions. They said, you are a young driver, for sure. For me, it's a problem if 5 world champions, they don't drive in Watkins Glen. Let's try to find a solution. Talk with them And because of that, he organized a meeting between myself and them in a motorhome where I got a lot of rubbish from them, always in a very, come si dice, umile, very calm situation, saying sorry, to try to change their opinions. They didn't change opinion, so I went to this judge. The judge said I had to race. I went back with a piece of paper. I went to Jackie Oliver. I said, look, I can race. But politically, the team Arrows was the first year, and Bernie said, okay, if he comes back with this piece of paper, we cannot allow Riccardo race. Otherwise, the Grand Prix is going banana. So at the end, the team had to retire my car. So I went to Oliver and said, I can race. He said, no, Riccardo, you don't race. Why can I race? Because we retired the car, you have no car to drive. So because of that, the situation finished like that. Let's say that the problem was that mainly because Hunt didn't say a word in that meeting, was part of a clan. In those days, there was a clan of seniors. The seniors, they were very close together. And who was coming from outside, especially a young driver, was not really very much welcome, let's say, no? And of course, yes, I was aggressive and wild. I have to say that, with the rules of now, for sure, I could have a lot of penalties because of my styling of driving. But in those days, you could do it. And yes, I was aggressive. I was young. Verstappen, when he came 2 years ago, and he was very aggressive. And the seniors started to complain about him. He remembered me a little bit, because he was the young guy, that he tried to force his coming into the group of the champions. So, but and anyway, after this moment, Emerson came and he apologized. Jody, let's say not immediately, but the year after, Jody said the same. I said I was not really much interested. So he said I didn't care much. Who was there then? Okay, the strongest one that came against me in the future after this moment, there were Ant. That forever he always did the very bad comments about me.
Did you ever have a civilized conversation with James Hunt ever again?
No, I didn't have. The last conversation I had with him, by chance, was that he was in Bernie's motorhome, and I came in, and Bernie said to him, look, James, I think after these years, it should be good maybe that you apologize to Riccardo for what happened and so on. And he said, I don't apologize I have nothing to apologize to Riccardo. And so I said, Bernie, okay, I don't worry, Bernie. I said, I come later because I had to speak with him. And before to go down from the motorhome, I said, I don't need James. I don't need your excuses, your apologies. But I want to say one thing to you. And going down from the stairs, I said, fuck off. But I don't think this is good to say. But really, this is my last words with Mr. James Hunt.
You can tell Riccardo was very upset by how James Hunt had criticised him throughout his career. It continued when Hunt became a TV commentator. At the 1983 San Marino Grand Prix, Patrese took the lead from Ferrari's Patrick Tambay, and Hunt described what happened next.
And Patrese's done it. He's towed past him on the straight. Well pleased he should be. He's only got to stand up, and the car's got to hold together to win this race, because he's quicker than Tambay, and Tambay really should have no reply. But Tambay is knocking out Patrese. Oh dear, that's a terrible mistake by Patrese. Only got to stand up, I said, and I had to say that looked like a real bit of Italian temperament from Riccardo Patrese. Now, he gets off the line, onto the marbles, and straight off. And that was really just a terrible mistake by Patrese. He obviously, his concentration was at fault. It looked like, I'm afraid, he just got completely overexcited, or so it would appear.
And in South Africa in 1992, after the pre-season driver weigh-in, Hunt couldn't resist highlighting Patrese's inability to match teammate Nigel Mansell's weight.
Nigel Mansell has arrived leaner and fitter than usual with he says, a newfound attitude, and it certainly looks that way. He's very positive, and he has absolutely dominated practice and qualifying here in the last few days. In contrast, his teammate Riccardo Patrese has gone the other way. He weighed in at the 6-monthly weigh-in for the drivers, heavier than Mansell for the first time ever, and once he saw that, he seemed to go into a decline and has really not delivered at all, considering how dominant the Williams has been.
Mansell leading, Patrese second. Senna is in third place.
Senna certainly will be very frustrated now. Patrese was really not up to scratch at all in qualifying. There was nothing wrong with his car, according to the team. He just seemed depressed about being fatter than Mansell.
And I think at the end it was a pity, because I didn't have anything against James. But for somehow he always came against me. I don't know why.
Do you think those 5 world champions would have followed through with their threat not to race at Watkins Glen if you'd been allowed to start?
I don't know. I don't know. I cannot know. Probably yes. They promised this, and if I think that we cannot know, but there was no chance for me. I was too young. The team was too young. And politically, there was, interest behind that I couldn't race in Watkins Glen, definitely, because of all these things.
How much of this can be traced back to the Swedish Grand Prix of '78, where you had that brilliant second place just ahead of Ronnie, but he wasn't completely happy with you after the race, was he? I mean, he was 1/10 of a second behind you at the finish, but he had a few words afterwards, didn't he?
No, but he didn't have No, he didn't. I mean, between all the seniors of those days, the most friend with me was Ronnie. He never came anyway. Yes, he said, look, your car was too wide. But it was the last 4 or 5 laps. So at the end, I tried very hard to keep my second position. I think it was my first podium, that one. I lost to South Africa while I was winning the Grand Prix. I was always competitive, so on. So at the end, I was trying desperately to have a good result. But yes, he said that to me, your car was too wide, but he was not. He didn't say in a very bad mood. And at the end, between all of them, he was the most friendly senior that in those days I had. So when the accident happened, I was really very sorry for him and very sad.
Let's talk now just about some of the high moments. And that mad first Grand Prix victory for you at Monaco in '82. I've had to re-watch the last lap of that race a few times before speaking to you, because as far as I can make out, you inherited the lead from Prost, then you spun, went back to third, and then you inherited the lead again. Have I got that right?
Well, we've got this ridiculous situation. We're all sitting by the start-finish line waiting for a winner to come past, and we don't seem to be getting one.
Well, Prost led and went out, Patrese led and went out, Pironi led and went out, De Cesaris led and went out, and now Patrese is coming in to win, without a doubt. Despite having spun off, Riccardo Patrese comes up to the line to win his first Grand Prix. He takes the checkered flag and wins. Certainly the most eventful, exciting, momentous Grand Prix I have ever seen.
Yes, but there's a factor that I got back the lead I never knew. And when I crossed the line, I didn't know that I was the winner of the Grand Prix. At the end, when they sent me to the podium. For me, it was a surprise. I thought that at the last second, instead to have only the winner, because in those days only the winner had to go on the podium, they changed the regulation. They said maybe the first 3 drivers, they go to the podium. So it was a big surprise. Because when I spun off, I saw Pironi that came by. I saw the Cesaris. But I saw also Williams that I thought was Rosberg. That was just behind me 2 or 3 laps before that I spun off. So at the end, I thought that the Williams won, probably Keke. But it was not the Williams of Keke. It was the Williams of Daly that was lapped. Keke retired. And of course, I didn't know anything because in those days we didn't have the radio in the car. We were still in that period that the driver was completely alone inside the car and he had to do the choices and everything alone.
It was an amazing day. What did Bernie say to you after the race?
Bernie, he left. Usually Bernie, half an hour before the races was finished, he was lefting to go home. So I didn't see Bernie after the race. I spoke with him the following day at the phone because we didn't have mobile phones in those days. So he left and I think he was very happy because it was a Brabham win in Monaco that I think it was the only Brabham win in Monaco of his team. Anyway,
it was a mad victory. But of your 6 wins in Formula One, which one are you most proud of?
Well, I liked all of them, of course, because a winner is always the most one that I remember with most biggest pleasure is Imola 90 because it was a coming back to win after low moments, as I said before, the Alfa Romeo. Anyway, it was a long period because before was 83 South Africa, and then I had to wait for 7 years before to win again. That was Imola. And also because Imola, because of what happened in 1983 in Acque Minerali when I crashed, there were some polemics with the Italian publics. So at the end to win in Imola and having also the Italian people cheering up for me was nice.
I thought you were going to say Mexico 91.
Mexico 91, I liked it very much because to beat Nigel and Senna is something very important. And the way that I won, that was dominant, I think it was fantastic. But let's say that I remember more Imola because of this fact of 1983. And then the fact that I won in Imola in 1990, it was like my own Grand Prix because Imola was like my own circuit. But I like all my wins. I think these wins I deserve it, and probably I deserve it. I deserved more wins than 6 because if you look how many times I was leading a Grand Prix and the car let me down, and finishing 19 times second, and the guy in front of me never stopped, probably at least a double of 6 I could win in my career, that's for sure.
You definitely deserve more than 6. You mentioned Senna there. How was your relationship with Ayrton?
It was very good.
Was there ever an opportunity where you may have been teammates together?
There was the opportunity in Ferrari because Fiorio wanted to have a team of Senna Patrese in Ferrari, but it never happened for me and it never happened for Ayrton too. This is the only moment that we could be teammates. But let's say that Ayrton, I said before, I think is one of the 2 drivers that I saw in my career that they could make a difference for winning, even with an inferior car, with a car that was not a winning car. It was him and Michael Schumacher.
Sure. And if you could pick one of them, If there was Patrese Grand Prix and you could have one of those two drivers, which one would you choose? Schumacher or Senna?
Sorry, who is the best between Schumacher and Senna?
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, really, I cannot say that. I put on the top both of them. They were very different, I think, but at the end, they were outstandings, the same. I think both of them, they had very bad luck in life. They were lucky when they were racing, but very bad luck in life. And I'm sad for them, for what happened to them.
I'm also interested that your Formula One career came to an end in 93. You didn't look at IndyCar. You didn't look at a career in the Sports Car World Championship. Obviously, you'd done that before with Lancia, I understand, but you were ready just to hang up your helmet.
Well, yeah, so I was tired to go around with my suitcase every week. And at the end, I prefer to stay home, but not immediately, because when the 94 season started, I still had some, will to stay in Formula One, because it was very hard to see everybody starting the season and staying home. So let's say that I didn't decide yet 100% at the beginning of 94 that I was completely off. What happened was Imola weekend that because of this thinking that maybe I like to go back, I went to Imola, to the Williams team to say hello. And I had the idea to propose myself to do some tests for them, because I knew that they had the problem with the passive car, that they came back because the active was banned after 93. And I was the last driver that I drove a Williams passive, the 91 car, the 14. So I said that maybe I can give them some help to put together the car, because the car of 94 didn't handle very well. And Senna had the problem with Schumacher that I think won the Brazilian Grand Prix before to go to Imola. So anyway, with this idea to go and make some tests, I said, if I go there, I know that they like me. I know that they appreciate my work, and if I am quick, maybe for 1995, I can have back a driver with Williams and Ayrton, because in those days Damon was just the newcomer, no, and I thought that maybe I could have that place. So I went there and I said this to Frank and Patrick, and they said, yes, fantastic. And then we went and we talked with Ayrton, and Ayrton was enthusiastic as well. And so we had a conversation all together. This was a Saturday afternoon after practice. And so I left Ayrton just to say bye-bye. Next test, we will meet. He said, yes, I'm happy to work with you. So very friendly conversation, and I left. And on Sunday, I was watching the Grand Prix, and the sad accident happened. Immediately, I said, the fact is that maybe it's not. They don't need any more a test driver, they need a racing driver back. Anyway, I saw the Williams team in Monaco for the following Grand Prix. Frank wanted to talk with me, asking if I still had the idea to be with them, and maybe they needed not a testing driver, but a proper driver, and I still said yes. But in those 2 weeks after the accident, I didn't live very well. I had always conflicts. I was not happy with the fact that I had to go back to the car. So at the end, when finally it looked like that I really had to go and replace Ayrton, because I didn't feel very comfortable with this situation, because I started to think too much about it. But Ayrton was the most expert driver. He was in the team that I consider always the safest team. I knew how much care they put into the car, and it happened to him. Maybe it can happen to me as well. And if I stayed for so many years in Formula One and still alive, maybe I go tomorrow and maybe it can happen to me. So anyway, I had too many doubts about that I never had before. So because of that, I decided that for me it was over. I called Frank and I said, look, if you had the idea to have me as a driver, it's better you consider another option, because at this point, probably I decided that for me, Formula One and for driving generally is over. Frank said, well, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure, because I don't feel confident. So thank you very much. And I put down the phone, and that was over with Formula One.
And when you put the phone down, was it a weight off your shoulders? Did you immediately feel different having said that to Frank?
No, I knew that I decided that, yes, it was over. And in effect, I didn't have any regrets after that. And because of that, I was with the mind free. As you saw, I went away also from the ambience of Formula One for many years, and I stayed calm with my new passions, my new hobbies, with the family. So I changed my perspective, definitely.
Wow. Riccardo, yours is an amazing story, and it's funny to think that history is now repeating itself with your son Lorenzo.
Oh yes, Lorenzo, as I told you before, it was planned to be a rider, but 2 years ago decided that he wanted to try to do some karting, even if I didn't want much, because here at home we have everything, facilities to be good with horses, for sure, jumping. So I was not much pro this, but he insisted. And at the end, I have to say that because he started late compared with other colleagues, that they start when they are 7, 8, he started when he was 11. He did a good improvement, and so I said, okay, let's go on with karting. But at the end, I enjoyed very much, because, of course, the time is going backward, because I was a karting driver as well. I started my career with karting and had a peak satisfaction with the
karting world champion.
Yeah, so because of that, at the end, we like to be in this world. He likes, of course, and I like as well. The difficult part when he's out of karting, if he wants to be a racing driver, because as I said, you need to have support, because otherwise, economically, or somebody that take you in this academy and help him to Formula One. That it means he has to race F4, F3, F2, and you need a lot of money, because without money you go nowhere in these days.
I find it amazing that there has been no Italian world champion since Alberto Ascari. Maybe Lorenzo is that man.
I don't know. It's too early to say. I try to give my best help to him. And yes, it's a good technique. I think, he can be a good racing driver. I don't know if he can be a world champion. Let's say that at the beginning, I didn't know, because I am quite severe in judgments, But after 2 years of karting and he already did some testing in F4, I have to say that it's not bad. It's not bad. So he can be a good racing driver. I don't know how good he can be if he has to go to the maximum level, as you said, to be a world champion. But let's try. I hope that for him that he can do it.
It's lovely to see your helmet colours back on a racetrack.
Yes, I like to see my colours back. But, I think those colours, but generally the old helmets, I like the old style color helmets because the new helmets, it's difficult to recognize an helmet, but in the way that the helmets were, I think it was much easier to recognize the driver.
I would agree. And yours are very famous colours. Riccardo, it's been wonderful to chat. Thank you very much for your time. And the weather looks fantastic down there in Italy, so I suggest you get out there. Get with those horses.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk with you and all the fans. And so have a nice time also in England. Let's hope that this situation finishes soon and we go back to action.
Great stuff. Thanks, Riccardo.
Thank you. Ciao.
What fabulous stories, from Piquet stealing his trousers to the parting words to James Hunt, and that incredibly powerful tale of the death of his Brabham teammate Elio de Angelis. Riccardo raced and lived in an extraordinary era of Formula One, and we're very lucky that he's able to relate some of those experiences to us today. And history might yet repeat itself, because as you heard, Riccardo's teenage son Lorenzo is now tearing up the kart tracks of Europe. Might we see that iconic blue and white striped helmet back in Formula One? Well, let's hope so. Riccardo, many thanks for your time. It was great to catch up, and I look forward to seeing you soon at next year's Monaco Grand Prix, if not before. That's almost it for this week, but before we go, it's time to dig into the virtual mailbag to see what you've been saying about the show. And there's a lot of love for Heikki Kovalainen, my guest on last week's show. Absolutely loved this episode and how brutally honest Heikki was at all times, says Connor O'Brien. Great insight. Well, yeah, he certainly was brutally honest, Connor. He told some great anecdotes too. And Thomas wrote in to say this: just listen to the Heikki episode. He gave amazing insight into the management side that I hadn't expected. These podcasts have been a godsend to me as I repaint the house. It's like watching paint dry, isn't it, Thomas, eh? Thanks for the note. It's great to hear from you. And Noah Motor said, I really loved the episode with Heikki while I was running a few kilometres on my treadmill. Not many times one has the chance to listen to such a candid conversation. Heikki did show a very humble personality. Really like this chat. Thanks, TC, for bringing the interesting stories. You're welcome, Noah. Thanks for listening and keep up the running. And a quick shout out to Joachim Diadand, who sent in a picture of him listening to Beyond the Grid whilst driving his Ferrari red lawnmower. Great pick. Keep them coming. Well, that's it for this episode, but we'll be back next week with another big name from the wonderful world of Formula One. In the meantime, if you want to drop me a message about the show and potentially get a shout out right here, I'm at Tom Clarkson F1 on Twitter, or you can use the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid. Thanks for listening, everyone. As ever, Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audio Boom. Until next time, keep it flat out.